Hello, my name is Lacie Maynard, and I was born in Houston, Texas. My family moved to Baldwin County in the early 60s, and we lived in Gulf Shores. We lived down Fort Morgan Road. We were about 6 miles from the fort. And back in those days, it was pretty rural and rugged. We did not have a phone for a couple of years, and then when we got one, we had a party line. And the school bus would not even come down that far to pick us up. The Coast Guard family that lived down at the fort picked us up and took us up to the school bus. So I've seen a lot of things over the years, but we were members at Gulf Shores Presbyterian Church when I was a child, and I was actually confirmed in that church. And when we moved to Foley, my mother was working part-time as the church secretary at the Methodist church. So we did not go to the Presbyterian church at that time. We just went to the Methodist church. We attended there. In 1974, I got married. And at that time, we moved to Pensacola. And from there, we moved to California. And then we moved to Louisiana. And then we moved to Panama City. And our daughter, Embry, was born in Panama City in 1978. And we lived there for, I don't know exactly how long we lived there, 7 or 8 years maybe. Then after that, I moved to Pensacola, Embry and I did, and then we moved to Nashville. And I was in Nashville for a number of years. And when I was in Nashville, we were members of Hermitage Presbyterian Church. And I was serving as an elder when we moved, so I wasn't able to finish out my term. But when we came back to Foley, of course, we went to the Presbyterian Church and got involved there, and I joined. Sanford Turner was the minister at that time. I think he may have been there for a number of years already. And we were in the old church building, what we call the old church, which was this really cool old building, but we had outgrown it. And that's why we ended up building a new church in a different location. But when we were in the old church, my grandmother moved to Foley from Mississippi because she couldn't live by herself anymore, so far away. So she was living in an apartment, and she was Presbyterian, so I would go pick her up on Sundays and take her to church. And she that was a social event for her to go to church. And one of the funniest things she ever did, and she did it quite often, was whenever we were sitting there, we had back then Steve Pierce, Ben Pierce's dad, was I don't know if he was the organist or the pianist or both. But anyway, he was playing at that time. And my grandmother she would lean over and she'd say, "You know, you can always tell a man's playing by those heavy hands." And she would tell me that every Sunday, and to the point where it was all I could do not to laugh out loud. But she enjoyed it, and it was a good experience for me to be able to have that time with my grandmother. So anyway, we moved to before I go to the new church, when I joined, back then, apparently an elder was assigned to any new member to be their person, and that way they could, introduce you to what's going on and spend some time with you, get to know you, that sort of thing. So my elder was Phyllis Montgomery, who, as it turned out, became one of my dearest and best friends. And she's no longer with us, but I carry her in my heart every single day. She and I were both realtors together and thick as thieves. So I've missed her a lot. And she had a lot to do with the church and with being involved in the new church and designing it and all the stuff that goes with that. So she was very involved in that. I was not at that time. In the church, I have done a lot of different things. I've taught children's Sunday school forever. And then when we had a Logos program, which was a big youth, children and youth program on Wednesday afternoons, I also taught that Bible study in that program. And that was a wonderful, wonderful ministry of our church. It's just, it ran its course, and we don't have the children or the manpower to run it, but it was wonderful, and it was a blessing. In addition to teaching Sunday school, I've served as a Stephen minister, as a deacon, as an elder, as a trustee, and I've served on the Christian Ed Committee, the Worship Committee, and the Witness and Service Committee. And I've also served on several different Presbyterian committees. There were a lot of people that came into my life during my time at First Pres in Foley. So many of them we've lost, but they just, what they meant to me, I can't even begin to explain it. There were so many of them that passed through that were inspirations to me. One of my very favorites was Sarah Leonard. She was such a dear, and she was always loving and supportive, and in so many different ways. Also, George Douglas was one of my favorites. He was married to Vera, and George passed away, and he was just a neat guy, and I've missed him a lot. And I know Vera has too. And I guess the single most important thing as far as my faith journey in First Presbyterian Church of Foley would be the Curcio program. That movement was Presbytery-wide. It was very intense. It was a beautiful ministry of a 3-day retreat. When you went as a pilgrim, you just realized you needed to do more, and there was more to life than just going to church and going home. And it's been a blessing to me. It saved my life in so many different ways, and I regret that we're not able to continue to do that. But it was special. And one of the great things that came out of that was we had what we called a 4th day group, because the 4th day is the rest of your life. And our 4th day group has been together longer than any other 4th day group that I'm aware of in any other church. We would meet twice a month, and we typically would have breakfast meetings, and we'd start about, 6 or 7, probably 7, and we'd eat breakfast, and then we'd have our lesson, and we studied various books, different kinds of things, and then we socialized. And if somebody was going through a hard time and had stuff on their heart, we would just talk about that. So it was very loving and very powerful. And the members of that 4th day group were Bob and Cynthia Malone, George and Vera Douglas, Marv and Lanier Maudlin, Neil and Charlotte Frick, Jack Kempsey, Jerry Zintel, and me. And now our current pastor, Jonathan Wallace, is also a member. So my length of time with the church has been wonderful. It has been everything to me, and it has kept me on the right path, because I surely have strayed plenty of times. And I love my church. I love all the people that have come and gone, and those that are there today that just make my life what it is. And I'm really grateful for that. And I'm also grateful to be on the committee that's helping with this oral history. I think that's so important. Thanks.